Welcome to Global Politics, Politics 2683. My name is Dr. Mutlu. I'm the professor responsible for delivering this course to you. Let me tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name is spelled C-A-N, but it's pronounced Can. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and since then I lived in a number of countries, including Portland, Oregon, United States, Victoria, BC, and Ottawa, Ontario. I've received my BA and MA from the University of Victoria and my PhD from the University of Ottawa, focusing on international politics. Currently, I'm an assistant professor of international politics at the Acadia University's Politics Department. My research focuses on security, technology, and looking particularly at the mobility-migration nexus. I'm finishing 2 books currently. One of them is on the smart border initiatives in the West countries, and the other one is on the status of Syrian refugees in Turkey. In my free time, I play bass guitar, watch films, and play board games. I'm married to my better half, Sarah, and we together have a little person named Eleanor. In the course, you're required to do a number of assigned readings. These assigned readings will all come from the textbook Concepts in World Politics. The book is edited by Felix Berenskotter. The book is available at the Acadia bookstore as well as the Amazon.ca. In Politics 2683, you will be introduced to the academic field of international relations. IR, as it is often going to be called in this class, is the academic field that interstate relations and the concepts that come with that territory focus on. Cooperation, conflict, diplomacy, trade, peace, and war are going to be the main focus of this course. We're going to be looking at these concepts in great detail. In Politics 2683, we will study different IR theories in an attempt to discover ways to gain more complex understandings of recent world events. The world events that we will cover in this course will include Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Cold War, the logics of détente and mutually assured destruction during the Cold War, the global war on terror and post-9/11 security politics, global climate change and environmental degradation, the Syrian Civil War, North Korea and nuclear proliferation, North American Free Trade Agreement, or it's also known as NAFTA, the Rwandan genocide, and finally, underdevelopment and its effects on gender inequalities around the world. Through these events, I'm trying to sort of engage in theories and concepts of international relations. So each module is going to be structured around the case of one of these world events. We're going to be looking at different world events to try to understand how different theories and concepts of international relations is used to make sense of world events. In terms of theories, we will learn a number of theories. So when you're done with the course, upon completion of this course, you will learn a number of theories, including classical liberalism, classical realism, and their recent iterations, neorealism and neoliberalism, as well as historical materialism, which is also known as Marxism, and constructivism, post-structuralism, feminism, and green theories. These theories, in essence, will allow you to make analytical sense of the empirical material that both we cover in class, but also that you may run into in your lives before or after this class. So through these theories, we're going to try to make sense of important events and developments in global politics. But to do so, we will also rely on concepts that come with each theory. These concepts are discussed in much greater detail in the assigned readings. These readings will become the basis of the lectures, so I strongly encourage you to do the readings before starting the module. Because without the readings, without having done the readings, you will have a very hard time trying to understand the details and the complexities of the things that we're discussing. I will not go over the readings in detail in these slides. I am going to assume that you've done the readings. However, if you have questions about the readings or particular concepts that we cover in this class, please feel free to email me. Or if you're on campus, stop by my office in BAC 216. I will return to your emails as soon as possible. That way we can develop a dialogue and Sort of talk about the issues, the problems that you're having. So emailing me on a timely basis is important to getting answers to your questions. The concepts we will learn in this class, alongside the theories, will allow you to make better sense of the whys and the hows of world politics. To give you a sense of the concepts that we're going to cover in this class, we're going to look at key concepts like anarchy, capitalism, cooperation, conflict, democracy, hegemony, globalization, identity, integration, intervention, peace, power, rationality, revolution, security, society, sovereignty, and war. Obviously not in that order. What we're going to try to do is, with each week, we're going to try to pair a theory, a world event, with a couple of concepts. So each module is going to be structured around these key concepts and theories that look at a particular event. So let's perhaps do a brief demonstration of how these modules that you're going to complete in the next weeks will work. Here's a statement that perhaps is common sense to you, or perhaps it's a new revelation, but that there is more to the world than meets the eye. So each module will start with a similar provocation. This may be a question or a statement. These statements or questions, or let's just say provocations, will be the anchor of our discussion in the subsequent lecture that we're going to complete. Let's take the simple suggestion that there is more to the world than meets the eye. In other words, there are underlying social, political, and economic relations that complicate our first impression of the world, or global politics. So you may have had preconceived notions of what you consider to be global politics, but what we're going to do in this class is perhaps complicate or problematize those notions. So this notion becomes especially clear, the notion that there is more to the world than meets the eye, when we look at different maps of the world. Let's take this first example. What you're seeing is also known as the political map of the world. It's called the political map of the world because it depicts or projects a differentiation of territory, identity, of states based on political boundaries of states. You may think that this is perhaps the most relevant map for our purposes, given that we're studying international relations or global politics in this course. But ask yourselves this simple question: what is missing from this picture? What is this representation represent? Who is depicted, who is included in such discussions? To give you an example, let's look at the political representation of Canada. Canada in this map, seen as a unified state. There are no provinces, there are no linguistic differences, there is no spatial differentiation, there is no idea of a differentiation between First Nations, French Canadians, Anglo-Canadians. So then the question is, what is missing from this picture? Where are the marginalized groups inside political boundaries? How about social and economic differences among states? How do we see them in this map? What is depicted in this map? What is presented? What is covered in this map? And simultaneously, what is not covered? What is not depicted? What is not represented in this map? The second map that you're looking at is an animated map that shows you the intensity and frequency of internet connections around the world based on the time of the day. As you will see, the day line is moving between sort of the night and day around the world, and you see sort of sparks of internet connectivity. That during the day, people are more likely to be on the internet because it's business hours. But connecting to the internet is increasingly seen as a sign of development and global connectivity. It's something that most of us in Canada, for example, take for granted, that we get annoyed when there is no internet connection. Even this course is presented to you through the internet. So look at the so-called global south, or the underdeveloped countries of the southern hemisphere in this map. There are pockets of connectivity in urban centers in the global south. Look at Brazil. Look at South Africa. But beyond that, there are vast spaces that are not connected to the internet. So can we assume that they are not part of the globalized world? Does this map tell us something different about about the global politics than the political map that we looked at? It certainly tells us something about global economics and development. It certainly tells us who or what globalization connects and who or what they leave behind. It tells you that perhaps our understanding, this romanticized understanding of globalized world, interconnected world, is only true for certain parts of the world and certain populations of the world. It is important to think about that when we're looking at this course, or what we understand as global politics in this course. Similarly, this is another map of connectivity. It shows us global flight frequency and volume. The picture it presents is similar to the one of internet connectivity, in that global north is obviously a hub of activity, whereas the global south is not. So when we talk about globalization diminishing or reducing sort of the distances between places, what we're actually saying is that globalization reduces the distance or the speed of which we travel that distance between, let's say, London and New York or London and Toronto. But if you are somewhere in the less connected parts of the world, look at the global southern hemisphere in this map, it takes much longer for you to join the mainstream mobility. This perhaps, as we will learn in this class, has benefits, but it also has a perhaps paralyzing or debilitating effect on the ability of states to develop themselves. On that point, when we look at this next map, which looks at the best places to be born in, it tells you something about how perhaps where you're born in this point in time in history determines how likely that you will succeed in life. So this map is the result of a study that asks a simple question: which country will provide the best opportunities for a healthy, safe, and prosperous life in the years ahead for an individual born in that country? So the study incorporates hard data on facets such as economic opportunity, health standards, and political freedoms, subjective quality of life surveys, and economic forecasts for 2030. So when an infant born today would be entering adulthood, it looks at all of these different variables, things like gender equality, job security as measured by unemployment data, violent crime rates, and climate are taken into account when the creators of this map thought about what opportunities we have as people being born today in the next sort of 15, 20 years. And it shows you that places like Canada, Australia, Scandinavian countries are better or best places to be born in. Whereas if you look at Central Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, are some of the worst places to be born in. That tells us something more about global health, global trade, global environment, than perhaps a simple political map would. The next map is based on a study. It's done by the Pew Research Centers as part of a fascinating new report on global attitudes toward homosexuality. When asked people in 39 different countries a deceptively straightforward question: should society accept homosexuality? People could answer yes, no, or decline the question. The yes answers are mapped out above. In red countries, less than 45% respondents said homosexuality should be accepted by society. In blue countries, more than 55% said it should be accepted. Purple countries fall in the middle, range about of half. And what we're seeing is even today, even after sort of what we consider to be a progressive turn in history, most of the world, most larger parts of the world still are opposed to the idea of accepting homosexuality in society. And that says something about the perhaps lingering effects, lingering strength of identity. Even though in this class we're going to talk about identity as a social construct, as something that is socially generated through historical, economic, and social relations, what we're seeing is that those relations still sort of survive the myth of globalization. That even though we talk about in this class or in other places effects of Hollywood, sort of a globalization of culture, or some say McDonaldization, what you're seeing in effect is that there is still a lingering effect, a strength of identity that we should not sort of simply ignore as saying that it's something of the past. Finally, this map shows each country's Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is a measurement of an economic inequality. The red countries are the most unequal countries under this metric, and the green countries are the closest to nationwide economic equality. And you see sort of degrees of it. So this perhaps convolutes or problematizes our understanding of where development is and where underdevelopment is. And in this class, I will be pushing you to think more carefully about the question of development, underdevelopment, questions of where development might be located, what kind of political systems encourage development, what do we understand by development. Based on these maps, you should get a sense that the world is a diverse space. It's full of conflict, cooperation, difference, similarity, uncertainty, and predictability. Different economic, social, and political factors shape preferences and realities of almost 8 billion people living around the world. These maps that we've looked at perhaps are overemphasizing difference or privileging a certain kind of global person over other options. In that perhaps there is more to the world than meets the eye when we simply look at the political map. That the political map of the world tells you something, that there are political entities, polities, states that are central objects of which we base our analysis on. But at the same time, there are those that we don't hear, we don't see, and they have a say and they have an effect on global politics too. And in global politics, in Politics 2683, we look at those as well as the states. We try to sort of understand the effects of those voices, perhaps as much as the voices of the states or the most of the powerful. So let's think about these two related questions. Who is heard and who is known? When we talk about global politics, who do we talk about? Whose opinions, perspectives, knowledge claims do we take into consideration? And here it's important to understand the relationship between knowledge and power. That a particular form of thinking surrounding these two concepts, that knowledge and power, is that power is not necessarily a brutal, militaristic, realist form, but it's also an ability to shape knowledge, what is considered to be acceptable knowledge, what is considered to be normal knowledge. So think about that for a second. Think about that question and ask yourselves, what kinds of knowledge claims do we accept when we think about global politics? When we think of the world politics, do we think of the uncontacted Amazonian tribes living in isolated areas in isolation deep inside the Amazon forest? Do they have a say on global climate change? Do they have a say on global trade? Do they have a say on economic prosperity? Even though the effects of the global relations are obviously affecting their lifestyle, in that their ability or their choice to sort of remain uncontacted, however you want to frame that, is at risk because of increasing global demands on mining, on forestry. They are obviously affected by climate change. They're obviously affected by effects of capitalism. So when we think of global politics, should we then naturally think about their perspective? Are their perspective important to global politics? Or should we, as we tend to do, think about financial markets, investors, states, and the health of global economy and the states that occupy that space of global economy when we think about world politics? It is an important question that we're going to come back to over and over again in this class, that we're going to ask these questions in an attempt to problematize, in an attempt to rethink what we understand to be global politics. Another good example, another sort of thing to look at is perhaps closer to home. And we should ask ourselves the simple question: is Nova Scotia politics global politics? Take a moment to look at these links. Explore both the BBC link and the CBC link. One is for the BBC News website, a news source that is international in its outlook. It is the British Broadcasting Corporation that looks at British politics, but also world politics. And it has been, in a way, a record of the British Empire. The other is the CBC Nova Scotia website. So you might have an uninformed or sort of a first off-the-cuff answer to my question, and you might give me a dismissive no. Obviously, Nova Scotia politics is not global politics. You may think that issues occupying our quaint province is not necessarily global in their impact and or importance. But let's think about it the other way around, just as we thought about it with the Amazonian tribespeople. Nova Scotian issues are related to global politics simply because issues are connected. Nova Scotia is dependent on developments that happen elsewhere. Syrian civil war might seem worlds away when you're in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, but if you see the Syrian refugee families that are being settled in Annapolis Valley, you might come to realize that the world is connected. Or you might sort of ask yourselves, I live in Wolfville, there's climate change, there's rising water levels. What will happen to the dikes protecting Wolfville? Or you might say, I have a mortgage, or if my family has a mortgage, what would happen to that mortgage if there's a global financial crisis? What will happen to the factories in the Annapolis Valley if President Trump gets to renegotiate NAFTA in a way that he puts America first? These will have profound effects on the economic well-being of our province. So that there is more to the world than meets the eye. And in this case, the devil is in the details. Smaller details mean the world to our class. In that, in POLS 2683, we look at the effects of small details, the smaller details. So each module will be structured in a similar fashion to that sort of this brief introduction that we tried to cover. We will ask questions, we will answer them, and in answering them, we will relate our knowledge of theories and concepts to the puzzles that we're addressing in the original provocation that we generate. In global politics, we will address a number of key questions. This course is structured around these key questions, and at the end of the course, you should be able to answer these questions. So upon the completion of this course, you should have a sophisticated way of answering these questions, especially in relation to the empirical example we discussed in class. First question is, how does academic discipline, a sub-discipline of international relations, or IR, engage with and construct global politics? The second question is, what constitutes an event in global politics? How do we identify events? How do we make sense of these events? The third and final question is, how do different IR theories conceptualize key concepts in political science, like cooperation, conflict, environment, gender inequality, power relations, war, peace, among others? As part of this course, you're required to submit 4 short essays. Each module on Acorn will have a corresponding essay question. These questions will appear once you complete the module. These questions are provided at the end of each module, and you're free to choose any 5 modules to write essay questions. You cannot, however, submit all 5 essays at the same time. You can only submit 1 essay at a time. The professor will grade the essays in 5 business days and return them to you. Upon receiving your grades, then you're free to submit your next essay. Each of these short essays is worth 10 points. Throughout the course, there'll be also 4 pop-up quizzes assessing the knowledge of course readings and module content. These quizzes are automatically assessed, and they consist of either yes, no, or multiple choice answer questions. They're each worth 5 points. The course will also have a final exam. You will receive the exam question sheet upon completing all the modules, and you will have up to 10 business days to write the final exam and email your answers upon completing the exam. The final exam will be worth 30 points. So in total, that's the 100% of all your grades for this course. If you have any questions about these assignments or any other aspect of the course content that I've introduced in this module, please feel free to send me any questions you might have through email. My email address is john.mutlu@acadiau.ca, as you see it on your screen. It is also important to remind you what plagiarism is and what constitutes an act of plagiarism. Academic fraud or plagiarism is an act committed by a student to distort the marking of an assignment, tests, examinations, and other forms of academic evaluation. Plagiarism in a simple form refers to copy and pasting, translating, paraphrasing, in other words, using other authors' work in your assignments without proper attribution, citation, and or submitting your previously submitted graded assignment for another course to this course. Any form of academic fraud, cheating exams, assignments, plagiarism, is both unethical and acceptable for this class. And neither I nor the nor Acadia University accepts or tolerates plagiarism. Anyone caught committing these acts is liable to severe academic sanctions that is determined by the university administration. You can learn about plagiarism by visiting the link on the slides. If I discover that you commit plagiarism, persons who have committed plagiarism or attempted to commit or have been accomplices to academic fraud will receive a failing grade of 0 for the assignment in which they have cheated or plagiarized. If you have questions about how to avoid plagiarism or how to cite properly, you can either look at the link that I have posted on the slides, or you can send me an email and get your answers as to how you can cite properly, cite correctly in the Department of Politics preferred citation style of Chicago or Trabian citation style. To sort of sum up this module's main points, in Politics 2683, we will investigate ways to acquire a deeper or more sophisticated understanding of world events. We will do so by looking at concepts and theories of international relations. As we discussed in this module, this introductory module, there's obviously more than meets the eye when it comes to discussing global politics. To understand these complexities, these depths, we ask, how does the academic subdiscipline of international relations engage with and construct global politics? We also ask, what constitutes an event in global politics? How do we identify events? How do we make sense of these events? And finally, we ask, how do different IR theories conceptualize key concepts in political science? In this module, building on that sort of brief exploration of what a module would look like, we also talk about assignments and evaluation formats, and we talked about different forms of assignments that you will be responsible for in this class. We also talked about what plagiarism is and ways to avoid it. I hope you enjoyed this module. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me at john.mutlu@acadiau.ca. Have a great day.